I would like for you all to take a moment with me to imagine that you are a homeless or unhoused person. Through a series of unfortunate events, you have found yourself without a reliable source of income, a place to live, or any possessions other than what you can carry with you. You decide that enough is enough and it's time to try and get a job. You crack open your laptop and you decide to look for a job, but stop, you don't have a laptop or a reliable Wi-Fi network to use. Okay, let's say that you find a public library with a computer lab. You see that Jamba Juice is hiring and you decide to fill out the application, but at the tail end, they ask if you've ever been convicted of a felony. Stop. Yes, unfortunately you have been, because according to a 2022 article by the San Diego Attorney's Office, unhoused people are 514 times more likely to have been convicted of a felony. Let's say you somehow make a good enough impression and get the job anyway. Now the hire paperwork. You get to the blank asking for your social security number. Stop. According to the U.S. Government of Accountability Office, unhoused people are unlikely to have access to their identifying documents. I feel like you guys get the pattern at this point. As demonstrated by our little thought experiment, there are innumerable obstacles when it comes to unhoused people getting a job, let alone obtaining anything else necessary for a secure life. Because of the way that all of these factors interact to exacerbate homelessness, the most feasible solution is an organization that takes these things into account and works on a case-by-case basis, rather than assuming that there is a one-size-fits-all solution. Enter Open Table Nashville. After having lived in cities like Waco, Dallas, Nashville, New York, Bangalore, and Manila, I have often found myself around both unhoused people and efforts to provide them with assistance. And I truly believe that Open Table Nashville has one of the most effective approaches to combating homelessness. Today, I would like to look at the prevalence of homelessness in Nashville, the reasons that it's so difficult to fight, and finally, why Open Table Nashville is the organization that you should choose to support. As we begin, I think that we ought to begin by understanding what homelessness really is and how prevalent it is in Nashville. Now, homelessness is kind of a tricky subject given that it evokes a stereotypical image of something like an old man with a beard, and while this can be what homelessness looks like, it is far from the only form that it takes. According to a 2018 study published by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, homelessness is defined as an individual or family that lacks a fixed, adequate, and regular nighttime residence, meaning that it can look like this, but it can also look like a person that has to live out of their car or a single parent that has to couch surf with their kids. According to a January 2025 report by the Nashville government, there are currently 3,270 unhoused people in Nashville. Now, we need to recognize a couple of things about this number. First, that it is a lot of people. It's around 0.024% of the Nashville population. To put this into perspective, according to the American Association of Medical Colleges, 0.027% of the population are currently active physicians, meaning that if you were to yell out, "Is anyone here a doctor?" you'd have about as much luck as if you were to yell out, "Is anyone here homeless?" Now, the second thing that we need to recognize is that when it comes to helping them, this is not a lot of people. We tend to look at homelessness as if it's a fact of life, but the reality is that it's a solvable problem if we're willing to support efforts to end it. So now that we understand how prevalent homelessness is in Nashville, we should also understand why it's so hard to fight. There's a joke that's been repeated plenty of times, and it's, why don't homeless people just get a house? Now, the humor in this joke lies in the fact that we know that it's more complex than that, and yet this simplistic attitude is often the way that topics of homelessness are addressed. The reality is that there are so many interacting factors, all of which deeper entrench victims of homelessness in it. One of the most crippling setbacks that homeless adults face is mental illness. According to a 2024 article for the U.S. News by Ernie Mundell, roughly 2/3 of homeless adults struggle with severe mental illness, and the rates of BPD are 8 times higher than that in the general population. And with no easy access to treatment, these conditions are all the more debilitating. Additionally, there's the consideration that the legal system is set up against homeless people. According to Justia.com, Tennessee made it a Class E felony to sleep on public property, meaning that homeless people cannot sleep under a bridge or in a park for fear of being charged with a felony. Finally, according to a 2020 article from the National Alliance to End Homelessness, an extremely disproportionate amount of homeless people are people of color when compared to the U.S. population, meaning that they have to contend not only with homelessness, but also with racial discrimination. Overall, I hope that you're getting a sense of the ways that all of these factors interact to entrench victims of homelessness in it. And though I only touched on 3, there are countless others. Luckily, there's an organization that's willing to take on all of this in an effort to bring aid to unhoused people, Open Table Nashville. I truly believe that Open Table Nashville has some of the most potential when it comes to the fight to end homelessness, and there are a few reasons why I think that this is the case. First is the approach that they take to combating homelessness. As per their website, we work from our cars, in downtown areas, inside hospitals, or anywhere else that we find people struggling with housing insecurity. Now, the advantage of this approach is that by going to unhoused people rather than relying on unhoused people coming to them, is that they eliminate the significant roadblock that is the lack of education about resources. Open Table Nashville helps in one of 4 main ways, each of which counters a significant facet of the dilemma that is being unhoused. First, they provide documentation. Whether it be social security cards, IDs, or birth certificates, these documents are absolutely integral to securing employment, social services, or eventually housing. Now, the second thing that they do is they provide physical and mental health services to unhoused people. In addition to mental illness, there is the consideration that unhoused people struggle with acute and chronic physical illnesses without a reliable source of treatment. Third, they provide supplies to people still living on the street. Whether it be bedding, warm food, or clothes, these things are necessary to the survival and well-being of people not yet ready to transition to housing. And finally, they provide both short and long-term housing for unhoused people. The unfortunate reality is that the systems of society are set up against unhoused people. According to a 2016 essay by Lindsay Crakes, who is one of the founders of Open Table Nashville for the journal Manifestations of War, we spend ourselves in hopes of transforming a system that is utterly broken and brings only violence, trauma, and death to those on the bottom. Now, this word system brings us to the final way that Open Table Nashville helps, and that is their advocacy. They advocate legislatively to try and decriminalize homelessness, make housing a right, and make respect for unhoused people the norm. They also inform unhoused people of their rights, lest they be taken advantage of by a system that wishes to harm them. I was only able to touch on a few of the things that Open Table Nashville does in the time that I have, but they do so much more, and they rely on donations to make their work possible. This means that the easiest and most effective way to support them is by giving a few dollars. Up here is a breakdown of what even $5 can accomplish. I know that we've covered a lot today, but I'd like to take a moment to recap as I finish. I hope that you all recognize that in light of the way that homelessness affects people in Nashville and the deep-rooted causes of it, Open Table Nashville is potentially one of the most effective weapons that we have in the fight to end homelessness. Homelessness does not have a silver bullet solution, but it does have Open Table Nashville, which is a hard-working community of people dedicated to tackling each and every one of these insidious factors. Together, whether it's by donating, volunteering, or just spreading the word about this organization, it can be made clear that everybody deserves to have a seat at the table. Thank you.